Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, welcome to our class on Midrash. Okay, because I went through my notes and I see we didn't do that, and I want everything to be yellow because yellow means we did it. Okay.
That means we learned it.
I want to.
Several lifetimes
it,
worth of us.
But I also realized we have a lot more to do, so I kind of like committed maybe to too much, but I don't think we're going to do everything. I think we're gonna touch on things so we get like a full understanding. But just a reminder, okay, we're going through Aron Sfarim HaYehudi, the Jewish library, the main books of the Jewish library, at least according to Rabbi Tzvi Graetz, and might be that other things that other books are more important, etc. But this is what I kind of like brainstormed and thought and looked and asked around. So it's a list of what I thought is important for you to know. Midrash is part of the work of our sages. When you say our sages, we mean Chazal, Chachamenu Zichronam Livracha, our sages of blessed memory. And these are the rabbis. When we say the rabbis, so we say the sages, we say Chazal, we really mean the same thing. We mean a period of time that starts when the second temple is still standing, okay, until around the year 550 when the Talmud is closed and is sort of like shaped as a literature piece on its own. Okay, so those like 700 years, okay, these are the sages. These are what we call like the rabbis, and this group stem out of the Pharisees, okay, of the second temple that we mentioned as well last time. So Midrash is one of the genres that they wrote. They wrote Mishnah. Okay, remember we had a whole session about Mishnah and the Tosefta, which are more like clear, dry cut laws. Okay, you pray like this, you do like this. We saw that. Talmud is like discussions on these laws, and it's like these very intricate discussions and complicated and going back and forth, etc. But one genre is the Midrash, which is an interpretation on the verses of the Bible, either in a more legalistic point of view or from a more literature point of view. Okay, so there's like different points of view of doing that, and today we're going to examine that genre and look at it a little bit more. Okay, so let's first understand the definition. Maybe should we close the door, maybe? So there are two kinds of midrash halacha, okay, and midrash agadah. The terms midrash halacha and midrash agadah refer to two distinct categories of midrash, which is a genre of rabbinical literature that interprets and explains upon the Hebrew Bible. Okay, so there's the Hebrew Bible, which is not written by the sages, that's written even hundreds of years before, but it's sanctified. It's a piece of literature that the rabbis look at as a holy piece of literature, and they interpret it. Okay, and there are two different ways of interpreting it. One is midrash halacha, which means like the legal midrash. The focus is that it explains and derives Jewish law, halacha, from Torah, especially the legal sections in books like Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. Okay, because in those books, Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, okay, and also Bamidbar, they're actually it should add that as well. Okay. Let's add that. So, okay, so on these book, the book of Genesis is more stories, right? The creation of the world, the story of our forefathers and going down to Egypt and how the Jewish people sort of like started. And so is the beginning of the book of Exodus. It's like getting slavery in Egypt and getting out of Egypt and coming to Mount Sinai and receiving the Torah. Once the Torah is received in the middle of the book of Exodus, starts all these laws, okay? All these laws that talk about, the things you're supposed to do and not do. That's like the core of the Torah. So Midrash Halacha, the legal Midrash, takes the verses and interprets them, expands on them, okay, makes them into the rabbinic Judaism that we know of today. And basically what it does, if you notice, is the Mishnah doesn't give us explanations about why the laws are like this. The Midrash comes and gives us the reasoning to that. Okay, do you understand? Like if the when we studied Mishnah, if you remember, and we said that the rabbis start asking like, what time of the day do you start reading Shema in the evening? Okay. And then we are like, hold on, who said you're supposed to read the Shema? It doesn't say so in the Bible. It doesn't say you're supposed to do it twice a day. Like we lined up all these questions, like they're like taken for a given that you're supposed to do something. That's the Mishnah, the dry law. The Midrash comes and gives us the explanation. The Midrash says, oh yeah, you're supposed to say the Shema twice a day. Why? Because it says b'shochbecha uvkumecha, when you lay down and when you rise in the morning. Okay, so the Midrash gives the reasoning to that. By the way, there's a big debate between the scholars of the chicken and the egg. Which comes first? Does the reasoning come first? And that's why the Mishnah goes? Or maybe it's like, no, maybe there's like some kind of like oral law coming all the way, somehow the rabbis decide that this is what's going to happen, and the Midrash comes and brings and offers the reason. Okay, we will never know the real answer, okay? But the scholars debate between themselves about which makes more sense.
Does the Midrash in this case address those things, those laws in the Torah which cannot be explained? They make no logical sense.
Yes, they try to also explain that. For example, when like the slaughter is supposed to be done in a certain way, okay? So the Midrash tries to bring an explanation. The Mishnah doesn't. The Mishnah is like, this is the way you need to slaughter, and that's it. But the Midrash is like trying to say, why is that? And then they give different reasons, okay? One would be, because it's more humane, okay? Another explanation is like, that's not the reason. The reason is we don't have a reason because God commanded like this. So this is God commanded, you have to follow it. So there's different ways of explaining this, okay? So, yeah.
Could anybody add to that? Their own, these are all opinions. So could it be added to?
Who would add?
Well, the rabbis of today, could they add to it?
Well, the rabbis of today write Midrash as well. Okay, actually, we have on our Zoom today a woman that writes Midrash all the time. That's my mother. Okay, she writes Midrash today of the second type, the Midrash Haggadah. Okay, which is modern commentary on the stories of the Bible. Okay, I highly recommend getting one of her books, which is called He Created Them, okay, which is her Midrash and interpretations on the stories of Genesis, of creation. Okay, so and she has many other Midrashim as well, quoted in many books, and she published them. So actually it would be good maybe that to invite her next time to
She could be a
teach
guest speaker
to
or something.
teach some of the modern Midrash.
She's right there.
Okay. She's not, her camera's off maybe for a reason. But we're gonna ask her to maybe to teach that next week. in Shavuot, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the legal midrash, okay, and the purpose is to show how rabbinic laws are rooted in the biblical text, often used to support or clarify halachic rulings, like I explained now. And the style of the midrash is more logical because it's based on the words of the Torah, and it's more analytical. It takes a word and it tries um, to kind of like analyze the word, and it's sometimes it could be very difficult to understand their logic, but once you get used to it, you understand. It's like if there's like a word and it has and it's in plural, so they would say, oh, it's in plural because it also adds this rule, okay? Or if there's like an extra vav, okay, like the letter vav, which means like additions, like ve means you add something. Oh, it comes to add another thing, okay? Or if there's like a principle in the Bible, and then they're like examples, so they want to say, oh, these example come to say that the rule is different. So it's difficult to understand at first, but once you get a hang of it, you can understand these principles better. And it's very text-based. And it often focuses on precise language or grammar in the Torah as I explained. And examples of work is the Mechilta on Exodus, the Sifra on Leviticus, or the Sifrei on Numbers and Deuteronomy. These are like the names of the Midrash on these places. And there are also different schools of thoughts. There's a school of thought of Rabbi Akiva and the school of thought of Rabbi Ishmael. So different rabbis had different schools of thoughts, and they had disciples that would also interpret the Bible in the different way of their interpretation. So one would be more analytical, so his students would be more analytical. One would be more creative in their explanation, so the students would be also more creative. Okay? So that's just a little bit about Midrash Halacha. Midrash Agadah, which is more the narrative or homiletic midrash, which usually interests people more, and people are more engaged in that one. The focus there is that it explores stories, values, theology, ethics, and spiritual ideas in the Bible. Okay, so Midrash Halacha doesn't do that. Midrash Halacha is almost always focused on the law and the letter of the law and interpreting and explaining how the laws came to be. The Midrash Agadah is kind of really, what are the values in the Torah? What does the Torah want to tell us, and expand on that from their point of view? Okay, so that's why it's also more common today in modernity to have people write their own Midrash in the style of the original Midrash as well. And the purpose of the Midrash Agadah is to inspire, explain difficult or ambiguous passages, and teach moral or religious lessons. And the style is creative and imaginative, and it often includes parables, legends, and philosophical ideas. So it's also much longer, it expands much more, and it tells stories. Actually, I attended a class when I studied Talmud at Hebrew University about Midrash, and the way our teacher explained it. No, actually, this was a class I think in rabbinical school where we taught. So it was Professor Mark Bregman, who was the pupil of the great Professor Yosef Heinemann, who was really the expert on Midrash Haggadah. And he said the way it went, these were like sermons that were given in the synagogue. Okay. People didn't go a lot to the synagogue during the week. They came on Shabbat. During the week, they were working in the fields early. They were like tired. They would probably, if they would daven, they would probably pray in the field. Like you remember, like we said, like you're on the top of the tree, you could recite the Amida. Okay, so that's what they did. They didn't have a lot of time. And on Shabbat, they had more time. So they would dress up nicely and they would go to the synagogue. They would pray. Okay, prayers were not long like today because, as I told you, prayers were added throughout the years. So they would be done, in half an hour, but they were there already. So the rabbis took the opportunity to probably like a 45-minute, an hour and a half, maybe sermons, but they didn't want people to go to sleep. So they would start telling stories. They would say the Torah portion this week is talking about this and this. And this reminds me of a verse somewhere else in Proverbs or in Tehillim and Psalms. And that reminds me of a great story. And then they would tell the story and they would elaborate on the story and people would be fascinating and would listen to everything that goes on. And then they would wrap it up back to the Torah portion and say, and this is how it fits in the Torah portion. And it would stick in people's mind. Okay. And then after Shabbat, their students would write it down because it was like such a great, sermon. And that's how we have the books that are here, like Bereshit Rabbah, Vayikra Rabbah, Midrash Chilim, and the scholars really analyze the text and they say the way it's told, it's like a story. And we're going to read some of these stories today of the Midrash and see really the mind of how it was created in this beautiful way. So
it seems like from the way you're describing it, it's similar to what Aesop's fables were, where they always had a moral or something to the story, and they could keep people's interest in the way they described it.
Exactly, that's a good way to explain it. Okay,
Rabbi,
now let's look.
also,
Yeah,
Midrash, it happens only on Saturdays.
no, but these kind of midrashim, the more Midrash Haggadah happen more on a Saturday. Okay,
Like in our services here on Saturday, like which part at what time starts and when it finishes? Can you tell us?
Whenever he feels like it.
No, but
we
it's-
start at 9:30 and we end like around 11:30, 12, and I give a sermon.
Wait, but at 9:30, it's already is Midrash?
No, that's prayer. That's a
Yes,
service. Yeah.
but this is what I want to
Yeah,
know.
we don't have a midrash on Shabbat. In Shabbat, we have a sermon, okay? The rabbi or someone else gives a sermon.
Midrash here, no, synagogue.
No, we're studying midrash, okay? Midrash is a genre. It's a book. Okay, it's a book. Here, pass it on so people.
Okay, so we do not come to synagogue to
No,
listen Midrash.
no,
But
exactly.
now we are sitting Midrash.
Now we are studying midrash.
What is Midrash?
Midrash, okay, is
have to have an example.
okay.
Example
It's a genre of literature.
Can you read what's
Can
on?
you read this?
I cannot see.
Okay, so I'll read it again. Okay, Midrash is a genre of rabbinic literature which interprets and expands upon the Hebrew Bible. It's interpretation. Midrash means interpretation.
But every time I hear now we are going to start Midrash. I do hear the word Midrash. This is not like strange word for me.
Well, there's also Beit Midrash, okay, which is like the house of learning. Okay, so we're now like in a Beit Midrash. We're like in a house of learning. Okay, I can explain that more after the class if it's not clear. Okay, let's give an example of Midrash Halacha, of a legal Midrash. Okay, there's a verse in the Bible, in Exodus. You shall not kindle fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Okay, so it's very clear. You're not supposed to light fire in your areas on the Sabbath day. Now the Midrash Halacha, okay, of the Mechilta in the book of Exodus, goes like this. The rabbis ask, why does the Torah single out kindling fire when it could have just said, do not work? The Midrash explains this teaches the Midrash explains this teaches that kindling is counted as one of the 39 prohibited labors on Shabbat. It uses a specific wording to derive legal categories for Shabbat observance. Okay, so I'm trying to explain the context here. There, usually when we read in the Ten Commandments about we need to observe the Sabbath, okay, and it says lo taseh kol melacha, you shall not do any labor on Shabbat. End of story. Do not do any labor. Okay, so the Midrash is asking, if it said do not do any labor, why does it say do not kindle fire? Because it's already included in labor. There's no reason to say it like to give a more specific example. Why are they giving a specific example of labor? Okay, so they're they're explaining, okay, that the reason that they are saying that do not kindle fire, although it's a more specific example, is to show us, okay, that all the 39 prohibited labors on Shabbat, which is like sewing and writing and and different different painting or different things like that are prohibited to do on Shabbat, they are written in the Torah also. I mean, they are derived also from the general prohibition of do not do any labor. Okay, so they're trying in a creative way, okay, to say this one example comes to light on all the 39 other things. Because to be honest, the other 39 are not mentioned in the Bible in name. They are learned by the rabbis from in a different interpretive way. So there's like coming, oh, how do you interpret it? It's only your own interpretation. It's like, no. Here's this one example that sheds a light on all the other 38 or whatever, 39 prohibitions. Okay, so it's trying in a creative way, and it's taking a simple verse, which has very clear meaning, and they try to do it in a more
Specific.
specific or creative way to link it to a tradition that they have already of these 39 actual more specific prohibitions in Shabbat. Yes.
Isn't it more that when you, not counting just fire, but don't create anything, because God stopped creating on the Shabbos.
Yeah, that's a more general
Yes.
understanding of the law. That's a more literal understanding of the law.
Do we have a midrash that analyzes modernity? I mean, these are, hundreds of years ago, but modernity has, changed a lot, the way people live and work and technology and, and so on.
Yeah, well, the rabbis, that's what the rabbis do. They always come and try and see, what is like the new technology or the new reality has to say to us today. When we learn about responsa and how the rabbis respond to the modernity, or we'll see examples of how the rabbis have changed the rulings as they go along. Okay, and like we'll look at like electricity or like things like that, and then we'll see how different rabbis and different opinions look at these things. Okay, so now I want to look at an example of Midrash Haggadah. Okay, so there's a verse in Genesis, and God called to Adam. Okay,
Adam.
Adam.
Adam is
Adam,
easy to say.
Adam, okay, and said to him, "Where are you?" Do you remember why he said to him, "Where are you"?
It was after he had eaten.
He eaten the forbidden fruit. right? And God is very, very, is he happy?
No.
No, he's very upset, right?
And Adam was ashamed. That's why
Right.
he was
Right,
hiding.
Right. So he's like, where are you? In a very,
Stern tone.
yeah.
Stern.
The Midrash looks at it in a different way. Now remember, Midrash Agadah comes to tell us more moral stories. It's less interested in the legal law. Okay? And it comes to tell us this. The rabbis ask, does God not know where Adam is? Okay? Of course he does. Instead, this is God gently starting a conversation, like a parent giving a child a chance to explain. The Midrash says God is asking not just where are you physically, but where are you in your life? What have you done? Okay, so the focus is a more moral and spiritual message. God is reaching out in compassion, not condemnation. So they're turning around, and it's very interesting because if you want, you can also look at the verse in the Bible and it's like, oh, I want to look at it from a different point of view. Okay, I'm now a psychologist working with kids, right? And I want to approach them in the right way. Am I going to yell at them? It's like, where are you? Like, what did you do? Okay, or giving him a chance. I was like, oh, tell me where are you? We all know where you are. God knows where you are. Okay, but maybe you want to tell me, what, like the teacher called today, and it was like, oh, the teacher called today. I had an interesting conversation with them today. Okay, do you want to tell me what happened in school?
Talk to the.
Or the teacher called me today. He told me again that you're like causing problems and you're going to be punished, right? So it's a different way of doing exactly the same verse and using it in a different way. So they come from a more pedagogical point of view to give us like a different take in the Bible. Okay, so. This is sort of like my introduction to Midrash, and today I want to study with you some Midrashim. Some of them I also did some papers on. One of my favorites, I don't know, maybe if I taught it here like maybe 2 years ago, I don't know, but it's always good.
Answer to God when God asks, where are you? Did Adam say anything or not?
Yeah,
What Adam said?
he said the woman did it.
So he didn't
He
answer.
She did.
Yeah, that was his answer.
Talk about being ahead of your
No, but
time.
he said.
Yeah.
"Where are you?"
No, wait, but was that in the first version of creation or the second one?
Okay. Okay, so go to your source sheet. Okay. Here you have a fascinating story. And I call this a genre of rabbis criticizing rabbis. Okay, so usually rabbis are perfect and they don't make any mistakes. Okay. Oh, you're right on time. Okay. But I find it fascinating that rabbis are writing about rabbis misbehaving. Okay, so let's see, why are they doing this? Okay.
Yeah.
We are at this. Okay, you have these.
Right down there.
Okay, we're at page 1. Do you have it?
Yeah, page 1.
It
Oh,
says
okay,
Talmud Bavli.
I see the 20 now.
Yep.
Okay, Talmud Bavli Tani 20.
So we have examples throughout history of even the most greatest rabbis who occasionally, admittedly, they sinned at something. So, humans aren't perfect.
Right. Yeah. So this is what we want to try to explore. So the sages further taught in praise of the reed. Okay, the reed that grows in the river. Okay, and it's flexible. A person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar. Okay, that's very interesting, right? I don't know, like if we agree with that or not. Like we're like, no, you should be tough. You should stand for your principles. Okay, you should be, a strong person. We encourage people to be like strong and not, like to because like, oh, like one day I'm like this, one day I'm like this, like that's kind of like right. The Greek ethos is like be strong, it's like and like the Jewish ethos is like, oh, like be like it doesn't sound that good, right?
It's sort of like an adolescent though, that who will stand, on their, because they don't have to really face the real world, so they're standing on their principles.
Uh-huh.
But as you get older,
Hmm.
you get more flexible because you have experience in the world.
Right, right. And the things that look like, oh, it's like I gotta like the whole world stands on this if
Yeah.
I will
I will,
stand,
I'll stand on this. And I'll
When
give
as you get older, it's like, you know what? It's like my
For sure.
opinion doesn't really matter that much in this
And then I find out I'm not the center of the world,
yeah, exactly.
which is a very tough thing.
Right.
It must be interesting when you're teaching young Talmudic
Yeah.
people their ideas about what's strong and how bend they will.
Right, but they start teaching this from young age, so that's what's so beautiful. That's why the Jewish ethos is different
think
than the Western
that you gave of different ways to approach a child, like after you've been, called by the teacher in
Mhm.
school. I think that that's an example of being, like a reed and being softer, but still having, like your approach is a softer approach, but you can still have your firm principles. And the
Mm.
way you, teach would be in a softer, gentler way, but still the same principles, really not wavering from your principles, but just how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's nice. I like
You
that.
get
I
one
like
with
that.
me and you do with whatever the
Right,
other is.
right.
And there's a Yiddish word for blungent.
Okay,
Yeah, I
Yes.
find myself being that.
yes, George.
You can continue the analogy of the reed in that a reed never, traditionally, it doesn't break in one direction or another, it reverberates back into a center.
Right. It has,
Which is more my philosophy.
it has a center and it also could look at all the
Yeah.
views.
Right.
Right.
You still have your own perspective.
Okay, so now let's go into the story. An incident occurred in which Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, came from Migdal Gador, which is near Tiberias, from his rabbi's house. Okay, and he was riding on a donkey and strolling on the bank of the river. And he was very happy, and his head was swollen with pride because he had studied much Torah.
Oh, this
Okay.
is when I met him.
So let's just, okay. So let's stop here for a moment. This is a beautiful story. He came back from his rabbi's house. He was probably there for days, and they were studying Torah, and they were like so happy and elevated. And I spoke about this, I think, last Shabbat, about the holiday of Lag BaOmer. Okay, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, they were also in a cave for 12 years and they studied Torah. Okay, they were like locked in. So he just loves to lock himself in, okay, and study. As like what could be wrong? And he's going back home and he's just so happy and he's thinking about all these joyous moments that he had. What could go wrong in this story? Let's move on to the next paragraph.
In some sense, he didn't really learn what he studied.
He happened upon an exceedingly ugly person who said to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi." But Rabbi Elazar did not return his greeting. Instead, Rabbi Elazar said to him, "Worthless, Reka, person, how ugly is that man?" Meaning you. Are all the people of your city as ugly as you?
I never said hi.
Okay. Okay, so now we want to stop again. We have a very big contrast here between a learned rabbi who just studied for days and days at his rabbi's house. He's elevated, he's happy, and he's like thinking about, it's like, wow, I studied this, and it was like so fascinating. And he sees this ugly person, Okay, yeah, I'm like, it's like, uh, and the guy, he doesn't say anything to the guy, but the guy says, "Oh, greetings to you, Rabbi." He recognizes that, oh, here's like an important man, a rabbi. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon was a well-known figure. And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna greet him because that's like the proper thing to do, like to greet a rabbi of that." So he's just being polite and nice. Okay. Rabbi Elazar could ignore him, which would not be nice, could greet him back, says, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." Okay, and go back to his thoughts because he's, it's like he's engaged. He's like, he doesn't want to be bothered, okay, by human beings now. Okay. So these are two optional responses, but no, he is doing something opposite. Now, this person is ugly. That you have to understand the Midrash. There's no, some things are not open for interpretation in the sense that this person has probably some kind of a defect, maybe, something is wrong with this person. Okay. So he really looks very bad. And we also know in ancient times, people with different deformities were, it was like much worse than, today that, with you understand what I mean, right? So he's telling him, okay, you're ugly, and are all the people of your city are as ugly as you. It's like, what's going on in the story? Why is he even doing this? Why is he saying this?
He hasn't learned much from his rabbi, has he?
Okay,
Well, I
that's
think
one
that's a
option.
good point. He may have thought he studied, but he didn't really learn.
Maybe
what-
he didn't synthesize what he learned.
He spent too much time in the cave.
Okay, wait. But first of all, is he saying something that's not true?
No,
No.
that's not the
The
point.
person is ugly.
But it
Okay.
depends on point of view. I mean, you may think a frog is ugly, but to another frog, it's beautiful.
Yeah, but he's kind of like telling him, you are
Worthless because
he's
you're
having a conversation. He didn't tell them, he's like very superficial. He looks at things from the outside, an observation. You're ugly, so therefore you're also worthless. Okay. And I'm forced to say this because I'm a rabbi that has to say the truth. Okay.
But no,
I've learned the truth, which is Torah. Okay. Torah talks about the truth. Okay. And therefore I'm obligated in a way to say the truth. This is how I observe it. And he's also kind of like, you interrupted me from studying Torah, from like thinking about Torah. I'm going to get back at you. Okay. So he's like doing all the wrong things one could do. It's like terrible behavior. You cannot justify it. But if we want to try to understand why he's doing it, these are like kind of like the explanations. Like, you interrupted me. Okay, you wanna maybe engage in conversation with me? I was like, just, you're not on my level and you're ugly, like move out of the way so I could continue with my life. And he also insults all the people of his city. Now, what does he want to come and really say at the end of the day? He want to say, if you're not engaged in studying Torah 24/7, you don't really have a life. Like your life is really worthless. That's what he wants to say. Okay. You as a human being, we are as human beings or as Jews, we're here on earth. God gave us the Torah. The Torah is so fascinating. There's so much in it. This is what we should be doing, not engaging ourselves in other things of life. So you're worthless and you're wasting my time, which is priceless, because every minute I'm here on earth, I could study more Torah, and you're interrupting me also in your presence. Okay, because I'm like now distorted by that.
only a rabbi could go from this to that. I mean, to that interpretation of, just hello, how are you?
Right. So I mean, it's kind of like
Read on.
on how tragic it is in the way that, this rabbi is even thinking, okay? He insults this person and the city and his fellow city men because all of you are not studying Torah. Like you're all like, just leave me alone and let me go back to my studying and to my cave in my mind.
The sure opposite to the way Abraham greeted the strangers along the road.
Right.
He didn't let them just bypass or ignore them or anything.
Right, completely different. Very, very good observation. So now the man said to him, look at this beautiful response. I do not know, but you should go and say to the craftsman who made me, how ugly is the vessel you made.
Now he's insulting his parents too.
No.
God.
Okay. The ugly man said to Rabbi Elazar, I do not know if all the people of my city are ugly, but you should go and say to the craftsman who made me, how ugly is the vessel you made? Who's the craftsman?
God.
God, okay? Listen,
Made in his
God
own
created
image.
me in his own image, beautiful, okay? So you're not insulting just me. I mean, you thought you're insulting me and the people of my city? You're basically insulting God. Wow, this is a clever person. Maybe ugly, but he's not worthless. Okay. There's something in him in that sense that he's also able to, in a very sophisticated way. He could have been offended, he could have started crying or hitting the rabbi or something like that. But in a very sophisticated way, he's able to tell him, listen, you think you're above all of us, okay? And by looking down at other people, you're basically offending God in your behavior. All that wonderful Torah you've learned is really worthless. What's worthless? Okay, you're saying like I'm worthless. Your study, like the essence of what you're doing is worthless if you're not able to look at human beings and see God's image in them. Right? So in one sentence, he turns the whole way around. Again, this story is written by rabbis. Okay.
But
So
idea of this is for us people to know that whatever we see, we cannot say it's ugly because it was created by God. So this is like story by itself. You know what happened? Like, okay, this answer he gave stupid, but something like this. But the answer teaches us. So we should accept almost, I think, everything.
well, that's a very interesting observation. It's like an art, right? Today, you put a banana on the wall and you say it's art and you sell it for $6 million. I would say that's like an ugly banana on the wall. But someone decided to pay $6 million for that banana, right? And I look at, I go to the museum and I look at Monet or Manet painting, and I'm like, that's genius. I look at Van Gogh, like that's genius, right? But people at his time didn't want to buy it because it was like ugly in a way. So it changes in that sense, but I think in it really depends. At his time, this person was considered ugly.
Well, this doesn't really show a person doing deeds of loving kindness. I mean, it's what you do that's important, not just what's in your head.
Right. So this is like, go back to the story now. When Rabbi Elazar realized that he had sinned and insulted this man merely on account of his appearance, he descended from his donkey and prostrated himself before him. And he said to the man, I have sinned against you. Forgive me. Okay. So Rabbi Elazar, and now we have to commend Rabbi Elazar for saying he's able to change. He's able to do tshuva, okay, to repent on insulting people. He's like, oh my God, I didn't realize I offended you as a human being, and I judged you merely on account of your appearance. He gets off his donkey and bows to the person. Okay, it's like radical change, meaning he's also bowing to God because this person is made in God's image, as Donna said. And he asks for forgiveness. He doesn't want to leave this open. So this is a beautiful part of the story as well. You are able to change, okay, in that sense. And what does the man says to him? I will not forgive you until you go to the craftsman who made me and say, how ugly is the vessel you made. So this guy is like, well, I'm not that easy forgiving you. Okay.
He also brilliant.
Brilliant. But he kind of like, I know you rabbis. I know, it's like you're saying you're sorry, but this is kind of like the way you are. This is, you study all this Torah and you think like you're better than everyone else, okay? And you don't blend with everyone else. You go to your Beit Midrash and you lock yourself there and you're not part of the society, okay? I don't want to be political or anything like that, but if we're thinking about, like the situation where you have, like the more extreme ultra-Orthodox that are studying all day long in the Beit Midrash, they don't, they're not in the workforce labor of the society in Israel. I'm talking about Israel, okay?
It goes on
They
today.
don't go to the army, okay? Why? Because they're supposed to study Torah and nothing else is important. But they don't blend and they look down on other people. It's not like they do that and say to everyone, thank you so much for supporting us. On the contrary, okay, they look down at other people. They look at them like you're not good Jews, okay, you're bad Jews, etc., because you're not studying Torah all day and you need to support us, okay? So it's like it's funny. I mean, it's funny. It's amazing that this midrash written thousands of years ago is still relevant to today to explain to us how society works and like how rabbis have to be more aware. They need to be more integrated in the society. There will be a price to pay. You will study less Torah if you're more engaged with people, but you have to have some kind of a balance. That goes back to the read. Okay, the overall theme here is like you need to be more like the read than the strong, stiff cedar, right? That was like the analogy. So yeah, Jerry.
I don't know if you saw a couple of days ago, there was a picture in the paper. Maybe not, shouldn't have been, but they're carrying a Star of David and they're shouting, kill the Arabs.
No,
They were Orthodox. That's what the paper says, that they were Orthodox Jews who were accosting these Arabs.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Well,
see
Maybe
that.
part of the same group, but
Yeah,
What's that?
that's not.
Israel or here.
I don't know if that's the same. I don't know if
Israel,
that's.
Israel.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same group, and there might be there's some some extreme small groups there.
Well, they did say it was Orthodox.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
They're-
it's kind of
yeah.
extreme people that go out in the West Bank and attack the area.
Yeah.
That's-
So yeah, but that's really a different topic. Like I mean, this is really not related to this. But notice that this person, the ugly person here, is not really flexible either. Okay, I was like, come on, it was like you don't want to forgive the rabbi, you don't want like a happy Hollywood, ending story. It's like he sinned against you. He said he's sorry. He went down from the donkey.
He's an
It's
old
like
man.
forgive
Not an old
him.
man,
So maybe he's doing it in reverse now. He's teaching the rabbi a lesson.
Okay. So now what happens is turn to page 2. Okay, or you could follow the text also online on the screen. He walked behind the man, trying to appease him, until they reached Rabbi Elazar's city. Okay. The people of his city came out to greet him, saying to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi, my rabbi, my master, my master." Okay. So there's like, wow, Rabbi Elazar is finally back in town. He must have studied so much Torah. We're so happy. He's back. Everyone's running out to him, just like when I come back from a trip. Everyone is like standing, waiting, to greet me at the airport, right? Signs, welcome, Rabbi Graetz, right? So they're all like, we can't believe you're back, our rabbi, our master, etc. Okay. So the man said to them, "Who are you calling my rabbi, my master?" They said to him, "To this man who's walking behind you." So he said to them, "If this man is a rabbi, may there not be many like him among the Jewish people." Wow. So first of all, we know the guy's still very upset, okay? But he's also shocking the people. Like, what are you talking? This is like our teacher. We adore this person. He's a master of Torah, and you're talking about him like this? That they're shocked. They asked him, "For what reason do you say this? Like, how dare you say this?" It's like, talking like this about a rabbi. He said to them, "He did such and such to me." Okay? So he's telling them the whole story. Well, you know what? You think he's a great guy? I want to tell you that what this guy did to me and what he said to me. So they're like, wow, that is terrible. But they said to him, even so, forgive him, as he is a great Torah scholar. Okay? So it's interesting. They're like, okay, yeah, that is wrong, but you should forgive him because he is a great Torah scholar. Meaning, although a human being should not behave like this, he still has a lot to teach us. There's still a lot in him that he could give to us, to the community as a rabbi. Do we agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah, he's a Torah scholar.
He's a Torah scholar, so there's still a lot in him, okay? But he behaves like a very indecent person.
Like a sinner.
Yeah, do we want to study Torah from this person? Okay, there's like a dilemma, right? This is the only teacher that they have. This is their teacher. This is who they know. They adore him. They want to learn Torah from him. Okay, are they also maybe, pushing the guy? It's like, you know what? Like, forgive him. Okay, they realize he has to forgive. They're not like they realize the rabbi did not do a good deed, a good thing, okay? But the rabbi's willing to repent. So they're trying to make that compromise. Maybe they are like the reed in that sense. It's like, you're right, but he has a lot to contribute. Let's not, if we're standing on our principles, yes, you are right. We should not study Torah anymore from this person. However, he is a man of Torah. He has a lot to offer to us. Please forgive him. I don't know if they would have said that if Rabbi Elazar would not have asked for forgiveness, but because he did, I think that's why they are trying to make a compromise. Yes, George?
I still think though that, in the analogy of the read, I think it's important to be flexible, to be able to understand a different perspective. But I think maybe, at least for me, it's more important to have a perspective that's central to you. Otherwise, you just kind of wishy-washy. Anything can modify you. But I think it is important to see the perspectives. But again, I think it's extremely important to have your own range of concepts that are central.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree.
I like that. Okay.
And I didn't want to talk about this, but because the George said something like this, I was thinking, first, actually, lately I do think a lot about this approach to life, an approach to our children, and how I talk to my friends, and I always like argue with them because they say, okay, don't tell children anything like bad things, be only nice. And I'm saying, no, this is our obligation to tell them the truth and then they choose whatever. So I think like read, like what we talked about, read. It's not it's whenever it's time to be strong, be strong. When time is be soft, be soft.
Right, I think
It's
that's,
it's
yeah.
not like
I
wishy-washy.
yeah, Sophia, I think that's exactly kind of like what the story is telling us, is to have that the ability to move, but also when to be centered, like we said before. Let's just finish the story, okay? He said to them, "For your sakes, I forgive him, provided that he accepts upon himself not to become accustomed to behave like this." Okay, I know these rabbis, he might go back. You need to make sure he's intact. So immediately Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, entered the study hall and taught. A person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar, as one who is proud like a cedar is likely to sin, and therefore, due to its gentle qualities, the reed merited that a quill is taken from it to write with it a Taurus quill, philastresis and mezuzot. Wow. He's taking this whole thing, he's forgiven, but he's a man of Torah. So he's thinking, how am I going to teach Torah out of this situation? And he's doing it in a brilliant way. When you write Torah, okay, you have to do it in a certain way, right? You have to take ink, but what do you put in the ink? Okay, you put the
quill.
The quill.
the quill. Can you make it from the cedar, which is rough and tough? It's like, no, you can make a fine, beautiful pen when it's made of the reed, because it's more flexible and you can write it more nicely. That's what you would use. And that, he says, this technical issue of how to write the Torah, he takes and he elevates it to a more metaphorical way, a more, a nicer, a moral way to teach us. Torah is written with the quill because it has the qualities of the reed, which is what a human being needs to be. Okay, it's still firm. That quill is still firm because it writes the words of the Torah, but it has that flexibility that could go and do and put the ink inscribed in a more delicate and beautiful way. And it's interesting to see that he says to them, I forgive him for your sake, because I'm doing it for you, okay? Because he is a man of Torah. By the way, the implication here is until he forgives, he can't go and teach Torah. You cannot teach Torah if you're a person that behaves in an immoral way, okay? Your Torah doesn't stand. That's why they're all waiting. This man is going to decide if Rabbi Elazar could go back and teach Torah or not. Okay, so it's like all in his hands, and he's also being flexible at the end of the day. And Rabbi Shimon, okay, I'm going to take this as a life-changing lesson for me, and I'm going to use Torah. I'm going to try to use Torah from now on to use it with its more gentle qualities and not with its more, zealous qualities in that sense as well, because Torah also has both of those. Yes, George?
Trying to propose kind of an alternative thought.
Yeah. If people have a different interpretation to this,
To the same analogy.
you could do that. Yeah.
The quill, part of a very rigid object, strict and firm.
Mm-hmm.
The reed, traditionally, papyrus from Egypt, made the paper upon which the quill writes.
Uh-huh.
So I think, to me, it's a bit of a balance. There is a portion of Judaism or any religion that is rigid, like the reed. There's the Torah that defines certain things that are to be considered as truth and fact.
Uh-huh.
And yet there's a paper upon which the Torah can expand, like the reed or the papyrus. So I see the need for rigidity in certain aspects of, let's say, religion in this case, and flexibility upon which this rigid object expands upon.
Nice.
Well,
You see?